Hello, this is Daryl Ehrlich, and this is the Billings Gazette on August 28th, 2015 at approximately 1:30 in the afternoon, and I am joined today by Beaver Tallbull. Thank you for agreeing to share your Vietnam story on our Vietnam Voices. So I've started all the interviews out virtually the same way. Let's talk about life before you went into the Army and before Vietnam. What was life like for you? And tell us a little bit about being brought up here, because you're from Montana, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what were you doing before Vietnam?
Well, I was born in Forsyth, but I was raised mainly in Lame Deer in my younger years by my grandmother, my mom's mother. And it's kind of, it's an interesting little story how far we have come that I have seen. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember we would go and cut sagebrush and start a little fire in front of my grandmother's log house in Lame Deer. And her house would be on the south side of Lame Deer, and across the valley on the north side of Lame Deer, the town crier would get up on the hill. And there was no traffic allowed south of the Highway 212 on Highway 39, which bisects Lame Deer. And he would tell all the news. He would holler it out, and you could hear him, and it's like 2,000 yards across there. And you could hear this guy as plain as day. Any birthdays, anything, any news that pertained to the tribe, and he would cry it out. And I happened to be down in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. My son did 3 tours too, in Afghanistan and Iraq. But I brought this story out down there. I had 2 real good soldier friends of mine. They were they got promoted, and they asked me to be there when they call it a pinning. I gave them each a eagle feather, and I was relating the story. I said, we have come so far from that elder gentleman crying out to news. I said, I can't sing and bless these guys at the same time, so I pull out my cell phone. I said, now through the magic miracle of today's, and I hit the button, and I had a warrior song on my cell phone. My son was actually singing in Montana, and the song was being transmitted to Kentucky. So
that is cool.
I mean, to show you how far we've come.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way, our life started out, and it was our grandmother that actually kind of got me interested in the warrior ways, no better term for it. And that my great-grandfather on my dad's side, Chief Tallbull, he was in the Custer battle, and he later was killed in a battle on Tongue River by Bernie. That is White Bernie, because there's 2 Bernies down there. And Battle of the Butte, he wasn't riding his normal warrior pony that day, which is a big bay. He was riding a white horse that he was training, and he went down to bring up one of the warriors that had fallen at the base of the hill, to bring him back up the hill, and his horse fell with him and crushed him. Anyway, he was the last Tallbull to fall in battle, and what I'm getting at is my grandmother took us down to the old Mennonite church, which is no longer there in Lame Deer, and they had Cub Scouts back then, and scouting was really big on the reservation. And much to my dismay, it's not like that anymore. And we all went through I think everybody did. Well, not everybody, a lot of people did back then. The little soapbox car races down the track. You built all that stuff yourself. And they had like Kool-Aid and cookies, for a snack. And we did it every Wednesday night. And I went all as far as you could advance in the Cub Scouts, which is your Weeblo. And so then I graduated into Boy Scouts. And subsequently, I'm a child of a broken home. So I wound up in the boarding school in Busby, but I continued my scouting career there with the aid of a science teacher, Mr. Raymond, and librarian Mrs. Kaufman. And I was a troop of 1. But I wanted that coveted Eagle Scout badge.
Yeah.
And they helped me achieve that goal. And then from there, I started into the Explorers. But then I finally got out of that school, and I went to the St. Labray, and I lost contact with my scouting there. My last 2 years of school. So after we graduated, a friend of mine, Alonzo Walker, I was working at the local gas station there in Lame Deer. He comes up and he said, Beaver, can I borrow $5? Sure. What are you going to do? And, back then, it's 25 cents a gallon. You had a couple gallons out of $5. He said, I'm going to Forsyth to enlist in the Army. And so while I'm pumping $5 into his car, in that space of time, I made up my mind to go with him. I said, wait a minute. And I ran in the store. I left the IOU in the till for $10 because I took another $5. We went to Forsyth. And I kind of teased Lon when I got down there. I said, you graduated as a valedictorian. You didn't know you can't do this here. We got to go to Billings. So on the $5 I loaned him plus the $5 I took out of the till, we were able to go. We went to Forsyth, then up here to Billings, enlisted in the Army.
Okay, and what year was that?
That was 1968, June of 1968.
Wow. June of 1968 is an interesting time because the summer of 68, things started, at least public perception of Vietnam started changing. When you joined the Army, it wasn't this was the beginning of it not being a very popular war. Were you worried? What was your thought going into that? You're going into
I really wasn't, because my older brother, he'd already been to Vietnam.
Okay.
And he was a sniper over there, and he was wounded. He was shot through the face here with a .25 caliber. And he wound up going to Letterman's General Hospital in San Francisco, I think it was. So when I graduated, he was already out of the Army. He came home for my graduation.
That's okay. He'd already come home.
Yeah, he'd already came home for my graduation and everything, So we talked about, and he says, I know you're going to go into service. And this was before I'd even thought about going into service. And
how did he know?
We're warriors.
Okay.
I told General Pendergast that one time here. He was the state adjutant for our National Guard. I said, you got to realize that I'm only one generation removed from when we fought Custer.
Yeah.
And so he told me, he said, when you go into basic training, don't shoot as good as you're capable of shooting. He says, no matter what you enlist as, if you enlist, he said, you're an Indian, they're going to stick you as a sniper if you shoot expert.
Right.
Because he was in college here at Eastern when he got drafted, and he did not want to be in the infantry, and because he shot expert, he wound up being a sniper.
Huh.
So I didn't. When I went into basic training, I shot just marksman. I'd miss on purpose.
Huh.
And then when I got ready to go to Vietnam, I had to requalify, of course. And then it's like it says on my 214, I fired expert with every weapon I touched. But yeah, so I knew what was going on. This is totally off of it, but I'm a high genius. My score is triple digit, and the first one isn't 01. I was tested in Busby years ago by a team that came up to check the intellectual level of Les Savages. That's the way
yeah, right.
And they came out of Berkeley, and I scored a 235 on IQ.
So you're Les Savages is Les Smart.
Oh, they found that out. They measured my skull. They measured the length of my nose, my eyes, my ears, everything.
Wow. So tell me, help me, because I think I can guess, but what does the warrior culture mean for you and your family? Help define that. Go a little deeper on that for me.
It's an honor plus a service thing. By service, I mean, ultimately, they could come here. Hypothetically, yes, they could come here. Intellectually, do we know they're going to get here? We doubt it, but there's that chance. So what we are doing is we're fighting so that our people by our people, I mean the Northern Cheyenne people, don't have to put up with what you see happening over in the Middle East, in those areas. Even though what we're experiencing is now these people shooting, each other and going into hospitals and whatnot, shooting up people. So in a way, we're trying to preserve a way of life, our way of life. And by we, I mean the dog soldiers, we were like our current day special op people. If another tribe came and raided us, then we went back and avenged it. And our name, Tallbull, my father told me, it comes from way back. It was not uncommon, I guess, for a Tallbull to be over 7 foot. I have nephews that are 6'5", 6'6". I have one boy that's 6'2", 330 pounds, and he's not fat.
Yeah.
So they're big.
Yeah. Let's talk. What is a dog soldier?
Like I said, it's a society.
Okay.
Amongst our tribe, and we were the police, and that our people and the Arapaho we consider each other as brothers of the dog, because not too many people back then consumed dog, but we did.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the dog hunts low to the ground. So that's the way we went after the enemy, was down low, and was Custer's demise.
Right.
They
Right.
rode within 50 feet of warriors laying in the dirt, and they didn't see them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of things for Custer's demise. Let's talk a little bit about when you go down to Billings and you enlist. Then what? And how was that? And how did people in your family take that?
Oh, it wasn't unexpected.
Right.
And it wasn't no big surprise, because my brother Chucky had been in, and they just knew that I would follow. And I had a younger brother that followed, and I had 2 of my 3 sons. Well, one just graduated, and he's obviously too big to be in the service. They followed, and it's kind of an unwritten, unspoken thing that you just follow in your footsteps. And like my dad, he was in during Korea, but he spent his time in Europe. And his older brothers were code talkers, but they took that with them because of the vow of silence. That's one thing about our people. When we take something like a vow of silence and we take it to our grave, we take it to our grave.
Yeah.
And it's an honor thing. We've done it for so many generations that we have fought. And it's just kind of a way of life. And there was a study that General Pendergast did, an independent study on his own, as to why so many Indians join the service. Per capita wise, you take any metropolitan area in the United States, there's more Northern Cheyenne soldiers during peacetime, and the enrollments just go off the books during the time of war. And I think it's just because that was our way of life.
Yeah.
We were a nomadic tribe.
Yeah, so you had to fight whatever comes along.
Yeah. And you fought to protect what was yours.
Yeah.
And we're just carrying on that tradition, fighting to protect what's the United States government and, our government.
Right. So it really wasn't, regardless of what people were thinking, this was just your way of life. So you didn't necessarily. Yeah,
the rioting and all that in the Kent State and all of that stuff in the Democratic Convention that year in '68, I think it was.
Yep, it was.
That didn't really touch the reservation.
Okay.
That was a different way of life. That was their way of life.
Not
Our
yours.
way of life on a reservation was a little different, and it's always been an honor for the men to go out and protect the tribe. So it just keeps carrying over. I don't know what the numbers are today on the enlistments as far as the tribes go, but I imagine it's still the same.
Yeah. What was did seeing your brother come back with wounded, did that give you pause at all to think, I could be going somewhere dangerous? Did that make you think?
No, I'm going to go get some.
Yeah. Okay. That's
payback.
Okay, you're gonna get him back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So where did you do basic, and then what were you trained in?
Yeah, I went to basic in Fort Lewis, And when I enlisted, my buddy and I, Alonzo, we signed up back then what they called a buddy program. And we get to Fort Lewis and they test you and they run through all this stuff. The only question I remember out of all that testing was, how do you pour beer into a glass without making it foam?
Really?
Yes.
And what'd you say?
Heck, I come from a reservation. That's an easy one. No brainer there.
Right. You said, I'm going to be okay in this Army.
But I scored extremely high, and they wanted me to go into OCS, Officers Canada School. And I said, well, can my buddy come with me? And they said, well, he's 2 points under. I said, what 2 points under? He was our valedictorian. I said, nah, I didn't have those honors, but I didn't tell him about all the testing I'd done, you know, and or about my IQ or anything. I said, no. And then they tried to get me to go to NCO Academy. And that sergeant was getting mad because he had a quota to make, and he had this kid in front of him that's going plumb off the charts on their testing. They allowed 90 minutes for a test. I was done with them in like 10 minutes. And so I'm the type of individual, I'm like that proverbial chicken. You can chase it all over, and it'll run from you, but you get it in the corner, and you got to fight.
Right.
You got to fight on your hand. And I'm bullheaded.
Yeah.
And I just locked up, and I said, no. I didn't sign to go be an officer. I signed up to be a mechanic's helper because that's what he signed up to be.
Right.
And so we went through basic training, and that sergeant split us up. We didn't even go through basic training together. We were supposed to be on a buddy program.
Right.
So we wound up being assigned to Fort Rucker, Alabama. That's where they train helicopter pilots. And the reason they sent you there for mechanical training, because that's where all the vehicles are to support the helicopter program. And we got assigned to the base hospital. So we get down there and we're going in for processing, and we got this young clerk there, and we're both together. And he goes, you guys are going to the base hospital? And, yeah. Well, aren't you mechanics? I said, well, isn't that what the doctors do? And he said, well, how are you going to be a mechanic? Being fresh in the Army, we didn't know. And being fresh off the reservation, there's a lot of stuff we didn't know. Oh, well, he said, well, they got a trucking company. All they do is haul gasoline, and they support tanks, the helicopters and all that. You guys want to go there? They need mechanics. Oh, sure, yeah, you know.
Right.
So we wound up in that company working on Jeeps, deuce and halves, 5 tons, you know, and big heavy equipment. We became heavy equipment operators too. And how I wound up in Vietnam started there because one day I got stuck in the tool room, and there's a bunch of tools that every guy had his little box of tools, you know, pliers and a couple of wrenches. But the big tools, your torque wrenches and stuff like that, they were, you know, high price. So they had to sign them out on a daily basis. And I'd done a real good job, and I spent my week in there, and then the company commander called me in. And he said, you know, you've done the best I've ever had in there. Would you like to run my tool, shed permanent? And I said, yeah, I would, but, you know, I got some stuff too. And I said, I'm signing for $40,000 worth of tools. Now, in 1968, $40,000 is a lot of money. I said, so I'm not going to leave that thing whenever I have to pull guard duty, KP, or any of that stuff, you know, in the kitchen. I said, so I'm not going to pull any of that duty if you want me to run that. And so we reached an agreement. So I never had to pull any duty, and I stayed, and nobody ever stole a tool after I took over. Had something to do with the pickaxe handle, but nobody took my tools. Anyway, I was in a dead-end deal there, and my partner, Alonzo, he never would make up his bunk or do none of his stuff, and he was always getting gigged and held back, and I'd have everything done, and I'd try to help him. No, and he'd get bullheaded, and I thought, well, you know, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to sit here in that tool room for 3 years. So I went to the top, the first sergeant, and I told him, I said, Top, I said, you know, you pull my personnel file. I said, oh, you can call battalion and get it. I said, I scored really high on it. I said, they wanted me to go to OCS. And he said, okay. So he did. He got my file, and he looked. He said, wow, how come you aren't in OCS? And I said, well, went along with Lonzo here. I said, but he's dragging me down. And he goes, not putting Lonzo down, but so he made it, you had to go through the chain of command.
Right.
So I get up in front of the company commander, and I asked him at the time, I said, sir, I'm willing to take that OCS appointment now. And you got my file there, and you see my records are, extremely high. And I said, I want to go OCS. And he said, no, you can't. You're running my tool room. I said, no, I'm not. And he brought me to attention and chewed me out and said, you're running my tool room. You're not going anywhere. I did an about face. I went out and I got to talking in the company. Now, our company was about 50 strong. And this is how bad that company commander was. 25 of us put in what was called a dream sheet, which is a transfer request for Vietnam. So you get 25, at the time, I think it was like 40% of the company volunteered for Vietnam to get out from underneath that captain.
Wow.
And that and being in, how do I put this? Heck with being politically correct. We were in the heart of Alabama in the 60s. Need I say more?
Yeah. So you put in for Vietnam and you got Vietnam, correct?
All 25 of us went to Vietnam.
Wow. So
there was Kaiser from Kalispell, Miller from Great Falls. God, what was that guy? And then Lonzo and I. His name Rodriguez? No. He was a Mexican kid here from Billings. And I think that was it. I may be missing.
So there's some Montanans there.
Yeah, we were all down there together. Mm-hmm. And all of us volunteered for Vietnam. We all went to Vietnam.
Wow. How long was it before you shipped off to Vietnam, and it
was like weeks. I mean,
really?
It was like within a couple of weeks we had our orders, and we all went home on our leave. And then from there we, wherever we were shipped to and what part of Vietnam we were. And Lonzo and I again wound up together over in Vietnam. And where do you guys want to go? Well, where's all the fighting? Down around Saigon and Mekong Delta. What about up north? Let's go up north. So we went north.
So you went north. You wanted to go while most of the guys wanted to stay away, or presumably out of fire. You said, "Where's the action?" Right?
Quezon, Washoe Valley.
So where?
DMZ. I spent all my time on the DMZ.
Okay, so you go up north to the DMZ. Tell me about what you're doing up there, and what do you remember about the country?
Hot.
Yeah.
I remember getting off that plane in Cameron Bay, and I mean it's like stepping out into a wet blanket. I mean, first we were sitting to look. This isn't probably politically correct, but we was all sitting in the plane looking up. Holy Christ! Look at them little short SOBs out there.
Right.
But yeah, it was hot, humid, stink.
Yeah. It wasn't like Montana.
No. Well, there was mountains, but not like our mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went up north, and Alonzo got assigned to a infantry outfit. His mechanical abilities went towards working on the armored personnel characters, APCs, armored personnel carriers, the APC. And I got stuck in the tank company. Never saw a tank before in my life.
What did you think when they said you were with a tank company? Did you ever regret transferring out of when you got up there and you're hot and sticky and now you're working with tanks? Did you ever think maybe Alabama wasn't so bad?
Well, no, not really. Thought never crossed my mind.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, Lonzo and I could have stayed in the rear and worked on ambulances. And, like in Da Nang, Cameron Bay, or, we could have stayed plumb out of the fighting.
But you chose to go up?
Yeah, we picked where we went to.
So what's an average day you're a tank mechanic?
I started out a tank mechanic until the motor pool sergeant had a pet. I'll just put it that way. And he thought he could run roughshod over everybody. And he got in my face one day and called me Chief. And there was a 55-gallon drum there, about half full of parts and oil, and I picked him up and shoved him in it head first and held him in it. So I wound up driving a Jeep for First Sergeant.
I get the feeling you don't regret that still.
No. And then there was a medic when I was driving for the First Sergeant that kept calling me Chief. And I kept asking him not to call me that.
Mm-hmm.
So I locked and loaded my 45 and stuck it in his mouth. And I asked him not to call me that anymore.
Did he quit calling you that?
Yeah, he quit. Yeah.
Imagine so.
Anyway, that's when the top and First Sergeant sent me on a tank. And luckily for me, there was a guy in what they call the headquarters platoon, which is just 3 tanks, you know, the old man's tank and 2 others. He took me under his wing and showed me on the tank how to fire, how to drive it, because I imagined like trying to drive a grader. I mean a cat with the levers and everything.
Right.
And it had a steering wheel, automatic transmission, brake, gas pedal. So it's kind of like, whoa.
So you quickly found yourself driving a tank rather than fixing a tank.
Actually, loading.
Loading.
First job was loading. Right up there on the DMZ, like 4 clicks from the river that divided. Click being 1,000 meters.
Yep.
And, I remember my first night on guard duty up there.
What was it like?
It was scary.
Yeah. So tell me what.
There was a firefight going on, and you could see out there, and the Gooks had green tracers, you know, and of course ours were, you know, orange, and they're crisscrossing like that. And they came over we all wear like a football helmet,
yep.
CVC, and earphone, and they came over and they said, we got some old Claymore mines, which are kind of they blast and they shoot like pellets and whatnot out. We got some old ones. We're going to set them off at midnight, you know, just so you know it's not incoming or you know.
Right.
But I'm sitting there and I'm mesmerized, and it is dark out, except for those tracers flying back and forth. You know, probably about 1,000 meters out in front of me, and I forgot about time. I'm sitting up there in the cupola, and there's a 50 cal. They set off those claymores. I dropped straight down in the tank, hanging onto the 50 caliber, shooting it straight in the air. And I started laughing. I realized what I was doing. I was standing down inside the tank, shooting that thing straight in the air.
Did anybody see that?
Oh yeah. I got teased over it a little bit.
So what was the daily life like in the DMZ? Was it were you getting shot at a lot, or was it pretty?
You know, we basically lived underground. It was fire base was Alpha 4. Mm-hmm. There wasn't any. That was it as far as going north. Back behind us, about 5 miles back, was fire base Charlie 2. Now, I was trying to find out. There was an article in a paper here, in the Billings Gazette here a few weeks back, about some guy had gotten a Purple Heart, I think it was, mm-hmm. another medal, that was at a fire base up there in Contian Valley, and he was an artillery person on 175s, and the only place I recall 175s being up there, and it was around the same time frame, was at Charlie 2. And I kind of, you know, I just wonder when that guy was there and where because I had 175 shoot right over my head once. So
wow.
It's kind of a small, you get to talking to people. Well, I was here, like when my older brother passed away from ALS. We were at the funeral, and the night before at the Rosary, I had open mic for everybody. And I got up and told about Chucky's Vietnam experience. And telling about how his highest body count one day was 23, and that he operated out of a fire base called Dragon Mountain. And a cousin of ours was sitting there, same age as my brother. And after I got to him, I sat back down by, his name was Wilmer Spang. And he goes, Beaver, he said, was Chuck it? at Dragon Mountain Base? I said, yeah. That's where he operated. He said, I did too. I said, I didn't know that. Here they were friends. You know how cousins are. You know, I mean, they talked after they came back, but neither one
ever brought that up.
So they never knew that they were operating out of the same fire base in the same time frame. They just never were there at the same time.
Right. So you spent most of your life kind of underground in a bunker or shooting. That how do you just cope day to day with that when someone's always firing at you or you're always in the ground?
Think about hamburgers and steak.
Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah. I really don't recall, anything in particular that we tried to do. You played cards, and in your mind you was invincible, that bunker was going to stop anything, because they throwed everything at it. The only thing they could hit on that fire base with any regularity was this outhouse. And yes, one guy was in it when it hit. He didn't get killed, but it blew the outhouse away around him.
Right.
And so they would blow it away, we'd build it back, because they had something to hit, and they were happy. And
because everything else was underground, so they didn't know what they're aiming at.
I led the tanks for like 6 months over there. I was on the lead tank, and I led the company everywhere we went. And like the typical day, like my tank commander, Joe Santiago, he would go in at night, and they'd have a briefing. Well, unfortunately, Joe couldn't read maps. So he would get the grid coordinates where we were headed. Then he'd come back to our platoon, and he would say, okay, this is where we got to go, Beaver. How do I get there? So I would explain on the map. I'd say, okay, Rocket Ridge. We go south of Rocket Ridge, half a click. I'd give him that kind of stuff. Then he knew how to get there. And then it happened. I wound up there in the front. We were back in the Cantien there, and we were stopped, and we were logged up for a long time, and our tanks were all lined out, and we had 25 tanks. I was on the back. We were way in the back, last tank, and we had our stuff off. We were standing on the tank, just BS, and finally I asked Joe, I said, what's wrong? Well, we're waiting on somebody to come. We're going to be, dropping some more lerps or something, or picking up some lerps, and he goes, no, we're lost. I said, Charlie 2's right there, the Alpha 4's right there. I said, what do you mean we're lost? He looked at me and said, can you get us out of here? I said, yeah, I know where we're at. So he radioed, let the old man know. So they turned the whole column around, and I led us out of there and took us back to the fire base. And, you're in that double and triple canopy.
Yeah.
Jungle.
But describe what that looks like, because we don't have double and triple canopies in Montana. What's it like?
Well, you got grass. If you, being a golfer on a golf course, they call it fescue. It gets high. It's 8 feet over there. Elephant grass is 8 feet tall. You can't see anything. The jungle is so dense that we carried a lot of what they call a canister round. It's like a shotgun shell round. And in order to see, we'd set off, shoot 2 or 3 times into the jungle to clear away the foliage so that you could see. And I pulled a lot of foot patrols there, and it's just like stumbling around in a dark room,
Right.
No matter what it was, is the old man. He was kind of a, what, and he spotted a deer track one day, and he asked me over there, and he said, "What is this?" And I said, "It's a deer track." But tracks were only about maybe 1.5 inches long, real small, maybe not even 1.5 inches, more like an inch. And he would send me into 8-foot tall elephant grass to kill him, one of them deer. And they're only 18 inches. Needle in the haystack. Yeah.
Well, did you, when you're pulling guard duty and when you're so close, the DMZ, so close to the line, is there someone firing at you a lot? I mean, can they see you? Did the enemy see you?
They got an idea. Well, yeah, because they knew where the base was and where it'd be like, sitting across the street shooting at your neighbor after dark. You know his house. You know what his house looks like. You know where the windows are.
Right.
So you'd know where to shoot.
Right.
And the tank sitting up in the air. But as far as when I was there, an all-out assault on our fire bases, we had too much firepower.
So it
they'd
was
lob
just
rockets at us.
Yeah, it's just sniping you.
Yeah, and they, like I said, they just kind of a poke and hope shoot at us,
Right.
And I mean, like we would laugh, we'd be coming through, and it's the best way to describe it was we were up, we dropped some LRPs off. Those are those long range patrols that would go. Mm-hmm. Actually, I was over there one day, and somebody was shaking my bed, and I opened my eyes like that, and I thought, God, what's Max Small doing here? And I thought, whoa, guy went to school with. Max Small, another Northern Cheyenne, was over there. He was alert. He was on those patrols,
Wow.
Anyway, we would drop them off, and we were pulling a patrol right up next to the D, and I spotted this unexploded 500-pound bomb that we used to watch those B-52s come in.
Yeah.
And you could watch them. You'd actually see the bombs falling, and they hit, and then the dust would go dirt plumb above the horizon, and then you'd see that sound wave coming at you, just like a heat wave coming off, and it'd rock you. And then we'd start cheering, and the thunder and the roll. And it's just 16 inches New Jersey set off on out in the ocean. We could see her.
Yep. And
you could see those rounds coming through the air like that. Anyway, I found one of them 500-pounders. And even though I wasn't trained in any of that, I did all the blasting with C4, which is a plastic explosive. So the old man says, he said, get the Indian up here. He said, I need you to blow this. So he said, he wanted me to do it. So I'd take 2 sticks of C4 a pound each, 15-foot of deck cord, 14-foot of deck cord plugged into them. And I had the deck cord wrapped around my shoulders with the C4 stuck in my shirt pockets where I had grenades hanging all over me anyway. And I go out there, and everybody's in the tank with just their heads sticking out,
And you're out there without it.
Yeah, and there's this huge 500-pound bomb there. So I go out there, and I'm always really serious. I crawl on it, and I started spurring it like a horse. Those guys just disappeared in their tanks. Anyway, I blew that, and we were headed back to the fire base, back to Alpha 4. Boy, here you could hear the whistling. And we were all laughing, and the incoming, yeah, but they can't hit anything, so we just keep on tootling down the, down the trail in our tanks. You didn't worry about hitting it because they couldn't hit you.
But you'd hear the whistle, right?
Oh yeah, you hear the rounds coming in, you see them landing, off. You just keep moving. I mean, if you're standing still, they might get lucky, but if you're moving, they're behind. They're all the rounds are coming in short. If they were firing in front of us, we might have zigged and zagged, but when they're falling behind you, you're just laughing at them. Oh, I wonder how many I killed with that one, and you laugh about it. And,
what's the, I've heard tell from several of the vets, when B-52s start their bombing run, it made the whole ground shake. It was massive. Is that
yeah.
What is a 52 when it's bombing kind of sound like? What's that experience like?
Like being about 50 feet from when these lightning storm comes through and lightning hits the ground.
Yeah.
And like a freight train whistling by, doing Mach 1. We knew they were coming, so they would always pull us back into our fire base because they're not very accurate. Then they weren't, because they're dropping from way up there. And we knew where they were coming from. We knew how their runs would come in. And so we just would sit on top of our tanks and watch them. And like I said, just watching them bombs fall. And it was kind of awesome because you could sit there, and I would say the dirt flew as high as a 45-degree angle in the air from us. And we were like probably about 4 clicks from them when they dropped, about 4,000 meters. So that's really blowing a big hole.
Yeah.
And throwing a lot of dirt up in there. And like I said, you could hear the planes, that noise, they make that roar. And then you saw it all before you heard it. I mean, you saw the dirt fly, you saw the sound waves coming at you, and that sound wave would actually get to you before the rumble. Like I said, it would rock you gently on your tank like that, and then the rumble, and then we would start cheering, because they knew a lot of them was getting blown away.
Right. You were up on the forward line, so does that mean that base camp daily life is pretty primitive? You don't have mess halls, you don't have any of this stuff?
Well, we had a tent. actually there was no front line over there per se.
Right.
There was a bunch of firefights all over Vietnam. Is basically what it was, around each fire base. A tank company encompasses so many people that they brought a structure, and it was a tent, and how it never got hit by incoming. Like I said, they couldn't shoot. So when we did get back into fire base for night, we had a hot meal.
Okay.
And the ones that had it, the infantry had it a lot rougher than us. They lived out of cans, the sea rats.
Yep.
And like a tank, 4 guys on a tank, we got a case of sea rations per day. There's 24 sea rations in there per day. And you got an infantry guy over here, he's getting 1 box of sea rations per day. So the distribution of that stuff wasn't equitable amongst the troops. And we were always giving the stuff to my company, in the year that I was there 11 months before I got hit. We never got to take an in-country R&R because of our rep for willingness to fight and our high body count. The other 2 companies, Charlie Company and Bravo Company, they even got to go out to the ocean, ostentatiously, to wash their tanks, but it was an in-country R&R. We never got to do that because
they went to the ocean to wash their tanks.
Yeah, to wash their tanks. And I remember numerous times Charlie Company was always getting in trouble, and we'd have to go in and get them and pull them out. So they kept us up there because we were their best ready line. I mean, it seemed like even when we got pulled back, what we would consider back to the rear, back to Charlie 2, which was about 5 miles back of the forward fire base, it was like an R&R to us. But we would still be on what they call 0-minute alert.
So that meant
you had to be ready to roll within a minute.
Did most of when you were out on a tank, that happened in daylight, right? Or did it
No, we were out overnight too.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you get around at night if it's that thick?
We'd log her up. We'd go into an area where it would take us a while to get into it. And then the old circle of wagons trick.
Okay.
We call it loggering up, and they got all the tanks facing outwards. And then we'd come back out the next day. Usually we did that if we were dropping or picking up blurps.
Okay.
And we stayed out overnight, and we just set a perimeter at night and set up a few claymores, pull guardy on a tank. And the gooks had their flashlights, and what they did is they cut whatever and covered the lens except for a little tiny hole. And then they moved at night by hitting their flashlight, blinking it off and on like a firefly. And there's fireflies all over there.
So you couldn't tell what's a firefly and what was them?
Yeah. The only thing we had in our defense was night vision goggles. Mm-hmm. And that's when they were in their primitive state, Yeah. I mean, one would be this long just to look through. And then we had 1.5 million candlewatt power on the searchlight that sat on top of the main gun. Mm-hmm. And it was about a 24-inch square. And it shot either white light or infrared. So
you could light it up, and then whoever's watching the night goggles.
Well, no, you couldn't use those starlight scopes with that because it was too bright. We had special binoculars.
Okay.
That had red lenses in them, and you just light that light up and you just traverse a tank like that, and then they look through the binoculars. And then you had other people with starlight scopes looking for movement. And if there was movement, well, then you just smoked it. That's what you did.
And did you get in when you were out on those patrols? Did you get in firefights with the enemy? And what's a firefight with a tank like? How does that work?
One-sided battle. You open up with everything. You had we had 3 rounds. 62 rounds in a tank. But you had 3 basic loads. You had your HE, which is your explosive round, your anti-tank round. And then we had that canister round, which was anti-personnel. And then we had one that you could dial on the top. You could set the yardage,
Yep.
and it was an airburst. You fire it out there. Say you're firing it out there 2,000 meters or 5 miles out there, and then it goes off. And whenever we had, movement, we just smoked them with whatever we had.
Right, you'd shoot first.
Everything.
Yeah.
I mean, the inside the tank next to the main gun was a 60 caliber, was mounted permanent, fed by a 2,000 round hopper. And as a loader, you'd holler up, and they'd holler on the way, and you went over here, and there's this butterfly there, and you just leaned up against it, and that 60 fired as long as you kept your hand on it. And as soon as he fired the round, then you grab another round, and whatever round he called for. Oh, yeah, and we had Willie Peter, too, white phosphorus. And you slam the round in, and that breech is slamming back and forth right here in front of you, and you're leaning on the 60 cal, and tank commander's up in the cupola, and he's firing the 50 cal, and the gunner, he's sitting over here, and he's firing the main gun.
What's the? Did you ever think you may not return to Montana?
No.
No, you're tough.
Never entered my mind. I think if you're going to find people, I don't know in this interview or not, that if they thought about that, forget about it. Never done.
Yeah.
You couldn't think that way.
Yeah.
And when your buddy got tagged next to you looked at him and said, "Sorry, I got to move on." Sounds cold and callous, but if you took the time, then it gets you, and then you're next. So you had to move on. I remember looking at my first one, and he was the guy. It was the guy that taught me everything I knew on a tank. He took a piece of shrapnel right in the heart, and I remember looking down and thinking that opening was no more than a half inch, and I'm looking, oh my God, that little tiny hole killed him. And I was mesmerized for, I don't know, maybe a minute, maybe half. I don't know how long.
It's kind of shocking to see it right there, right?
First one, yeah, big time, and then I just moved away and forgot about it. So I mean, if you stop to ponder any of that, you're gonna get run over.
Yeah.
So you had to keep moving. You had to keep going.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, because we were under fire, like you said, we were under fire all the time. Not so much like rifle fire or something like that, but ours was all mortar fire.
Right.
We call them rockets. RPGs. That's what I got.
Were they at night, at day, all times? When did they know?
Never know when they were going to do it.
That's part of the psychology, right?
The routine is just. I remember one time we had incoming up there in Alpha 4, and the first one, and they were hollered incoming, and of course you start running looking for a bunker to get in. And there was this black guy, I can't remember his name. He took off running. We're all running like, in a duck walk way down, just moving as fast as you can.
Right.
As small as you can. And there was about 5 of us, and every bunker we come to was full. Finally, I can't remember who hollered, but somebody hollered, "Stop, stop." Why? Incoming, stop. Oh.
You're just still going around.
Yeah, we were still running, looking for someplace to hide, and it was already over.
What did you miss about Montana? Because you had to think about home, right? I mean.
Mostly food.
Yeah.
Then you wondered about your girlfriends, and you talked about them, and mostly you talked about the car you were going to get and what you were going to eat.
Okay. And what did you miss the most? What did you miss?
Hamburgers, cheeseburgers, and steak.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you going to have? Tonight, I'm going to have a cheeseburger. And then there was a Marine major that went over to the Gooks, and we used to run at nighttime. The CIA had a bounty on him.
Huh.
And it was $15,000. And you got a 2-week all expense paying R&R anywhere in the world if you killed him or captured him. They led a phantom platoon that we pursued hot and heavy. But we used to sit around at night and talk about what we would do if we got a hold of him. You do talk about some of that stuff because he's out there helping them inflict damages on you or your buddies.
Yeah.
So, you want to get some. And so, yeah, we would go after him. That's why I pulled a lot of foot patrols, even though I didn't need to.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand if I told you about that friend of mine that I met a couple of, 1st of August. Joel Jimenez, Poncho. We pulled some stunts, him and I over there. But we always said when we get back in the world, that's what we called the States, is get back to the world. We were going to hook up.
Yep.
It took us 45 years.
What was that like when you saw him?
Like I'd seen him the day before.
Yeah.
It was a long drive down to Texas, Lubbock, Texas, and we would talk a little bit, and he'd say, well, what should we do? I said, well, we'll go out and get that steak. And I said, then we're going to get tore up from the floor up. I said, tequila Sheila. So we were talking tough all the way down. And when we actually got together, we pulled up to the hotel, my wife and I, and we were taking a grandson back down because he lives down there. And I remember driving up like this, and there was this Mexican guy. He walked behind this pickup like that, and I didn't see his face. And he had his back to me. And God, did they have valet here? I shouldn't have thought that, but I did.
Right.
And we got out of the car, and he turned. And I said, oh, shit, that's Poncho. So, hey, dude. And he turned around, and, we hugged, and we just started talking like we'd seen each other the day before. And we both felt the same way, just like there wasn't 45 years between us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's... Tell me about the when you met him. You told me a story when we talked earlier. Will you tell me the one about you went in and you had dinner?
Dinner?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. My wife has lived down there for about 13 years and has property. So she knew where to go because she lived her place right outside of Lubbock. So she said, "There's this really good steakhouse I want to take you guys to." So we go there, and it was probably be like going from here to Laurel. And it was a real nice steakhouse, and, we ordered our meal, and every one of us, ordered the same thing, a rib steak, because that was the meal we wanted.
Right.
And we had a couple beers, and this young kid was waiting on us. He was about 18. And he goes, were you guys in Vietnam? I said, yeah. And Poncho goes, yeah, we both were. And he said, my granddad was. And I said, oh, good. And he said, yeah. And he said, he passed away about 2 months ago. And, we're sorry, for your loss and everything. And he'd come by, and he kept really checking on us more than what a normal, and he was really polite. I mean, super polite kid. And we were just finishing our meal, and like I said, these tough guys who was going to get tore up from the floor up each had a beer. And we were ready for bed. Anyway, he comes over and he says, somebody got your meal. And we both stood up, and neither one of us knew how to react, because we had, to that point, neither one of us had ever been thanked. I was by my people, but outside of that, was never thanked for anything for our service in Vietnam. And to have somebody buy your dinner, we both cried.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when we were finally done, about 10, 15 minutes later, Poncho goes to look for this kid. For the manager. He wanted to find out who bought our meal so we could thank him. And it turned out it was the kid, to honor his granddad. Mm. Yeah. 45 years.
Yeah. And it was worth the reunion.
Well, it was 45 years before I had somebody say thank you.
Yeah. How do you think your time in Vietnam changed you?
Oh, besides making me crazy, you mean?
Yeah, besides that.
We had a deal here, and it actually started in Billings. It was called a rap group to help us adjust, because each individually thought that they had only experienced those experiences and no one else. They were unique to that in themselves. And little did we know that, there was other guys out there. And originally they dubbed it the 40-20 syndrome. You had experience what a 40-year-old would by the time you were 20. Well, we changed it to 60-20, that you had experienced everything someone 60 years old, life, death, all of the tragedies, the highs, the lows, and by the time you were 20. So I personally, I didn't like to be told what to do, because in my mind, I had experienced the ultimate in pain and been deprived from my family and friends. I mean, I did volunteer, but not to be away from all of that and then be over there and see the way those people lived and the atrocities of war. And it made you appreciate the little things. But if somebody, any authority figure, you didn't want somebody telling you what to do because, hey, I was in the jungle over there, I made it. So just,
right. So why should I take orders from you?
Yeah, just leave me alone, and I won't bother you. You don't bother me, because I had to bother people that weren't bothering me directly, but they were bothering other people. So we went in there to police them. So, what right do you have to tell me what to do? You didn't earn that right on the battlefield. We did.
So it's taken a while. How did you overcome? You said it made you crazy. What does that mean for you?
I just kind of joke.
Yeah.
PTSD.
Yeah.
Yeah. I personally rated at 30% disability of PTSD. 14 years after I came back, I had my first flashback.
What was that like?
Fortunately enough, I'm not bragging, but I was intelligent enough to understand what my mind was doing. And I got up and drove myself to the hospital. Scared the living bejesus out of the nurse who'd known me since I was a baby.
Right. So you hadn't had one for 14 years, and then it came back.
Sitting in the office, looking around which one of them I was going to kill.
Wow.
But I knew what was going to happen, so I got to a doctor and got treatment for it.
Right. What's the, you said I saw how they lived. How did the people in Vietnam live?
They didn't have anything or much, and you could buy what you wanted over there for a bar of soap, laundry soap. It seemed like time was turned back, the primitive way they lived. They virtually lived around the town well, and the kids, I don't know what age they start putting clothes on them, but it probably wasn't until they were about 7, 8, 9. They just ran around, naked, the little kids, and fight each other, and they were fighting tooth and nail for something to eat, and we would actually have to run them off. They'd come to our garbage dumps, like when we were on occasion when we got to go back into the rear because our tanks would get tore up so bad, So we'd go back for a week or two to fix our tanks. And we'd have to pull guard duty, and they'd actually have guards around the dump because the slop that we were throwing away from our mess halls in the rear, they were eating.
Wow.
So, and they didn't want to be in that war. It's always been proven if you took the politicians and put them on the battlefield, wars wouldn't be happening.
That's true. That is true. That seems to be.
So,
yeah.
Were they oppressed? Yeah, they were. Was it exploited by the troops? To some degree. There's two sides to every coin. You got to look at a lot of them, the majority of them troops over there didn't want to be there. They were drafted. And the people just, I don't know, it's just like what they call it, living hand to mouth, just
Right.
love their beetle nut.
Right.
They love to chew that beetle nut and get them squirrely.
Did you tell me about you had injuries from the war. You were injured physically. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I actually the first time was on my forehead, and I remember the old man. Tank was in front of ours, and I got opened up here. And Doc, the medic, he'd been in country probably about a week or two when that one happened, and the old man is all excited, and he was hollering at the tank commander, Santiago. Tallbull's hitting the head. He's hitting the head. And I'm okay, but scalp wounds, they bleed. Yeah. It wasn't nothing. I just told Doc, stay up there, don't get hurt.
So was it just shrapnel or what?
Yeah, just. And then the second one was on the top of my head. I was Looney Tunes from that for about 5 days, concussion and all that.
Right.
But the big one was in a place called Fishhook by the D, out at Alpha 4. We were going to get in a big firefight that day because it was going to raid a big cache of arms that we captured a diary about 3 days before. And what they did is they sent out to try to keep us from going. They sent 2 gooks out. One had the launcher, and the other one had an RPG, and they were in a hole in the ground. And I had showed because I wasn't supposed to be there. I had what we called it crotch rot. Jungle rot.
Mm-hmm.
You got it everywhere. I mean, I even had it under my eyes. It's like athlete's feet where skin peeled. I had it up around my eye. I had it everywhere, in my ears. So I was supposed to go back to battalion aid station, which meant back in the rear. I already had my orders for Frankfurt, Germany, so I was done with Vietnam. And it was this,
And you'd been over there for 11 months, 12 months? Yeah,
11
okay.
months. So you had a deal over there. The closer, when you first started out over there, you had to put your fingers like this. That's how much time you had left over there. And as it shrunk down, you went like this, and you say you're getting short.
Right.
Well, I was down here. I had no more time. And they were rumbling out to the base that morning, and where them 2 gooks, where they made the mistake is they knew we had 23 tanks running. They didn't know that we pulled in an infantry unit with 3 APCs, and Charlie Company had 24 tanks. So they knew to count 23, pop up out of the hole and shoot the last tank. And hopefully get away, run, because they had no other weapons. Anyway, the boys are heading out, and I'm standing there going like this. Everybody knows I'm done. They're never going to see me again because I'm leaving for... My tank was the last one. Prior to relinquishing that lead, I showed a guy from first platoon how they should, what they needed to look for out in front, like where they fired their rounds. They didn't shoot in the tree, they shot in the ground. They were in the holes. And all I told them is, monkeys aren't going to shoot at you. I said, granted, the guerrillas charged us one time with rocks, but, that was... And what they were doing, I remember, and then my tank come along. And to this day, I can't explain why I ran out there and jumped on that tank. I can only come up with one explanation. And I have given this a lot of thought over the years. My tribe, the elders used to go to Bear Butte, which is a sacred mountain to us. They went down to World War I, World War II, Korea, and they fasted. And they predicted the outcomes of those wars. And when they went down there, when Vietnam was first starting up, we were kids then. And me and my cousin went with my grandpa Albert Tallbull and my grandmother Mary. We went down there. Well, nobody's supposed to be on that mountain until they come down on Sunday. And our grandmother sent us out to look for this little fern that grows right next to the ground. And they use it. Well, I use it now. And that's where I get my power from. Outside of our tribe, people refer to us as medicine men, but I don't refer to my... Anyway, Ross and I we got to looking for that, and we wound up on that mountain. We weren't supposed to be up there. And he got in trouble with the law and had to go to prison. And he's all scarred up from car wrecks and whatnot. And I think that's why I went out and got on that tank. I don't think I was destined to come back from there totally intact.
That's the punishment
for going up on that mountain. And he received his, and I received mine. There's no other logical explanation for me to run out there and jump on that tank when I'm headed out of Vietnam and I know there's going to be a firefight.
So you went out, you jumped on that tank, and you knew.
45 minutes later.
What happened?
RPG, they popped up out of that hole about, 30 feet from the tank. And they shot, and we were sitting on the outside of the tank, and I was thinking I just thought of something. I left 2 beers in one of these boxes here. I don't know if I should drink one of them, and this is 7:45 in the morning, or I should wait till we come back in. And I'm sitting with my elbow on my knee in my cupel, my hole right here to go down in the tank, and gunner's sitting right in front of me. Right, I could touch him, and that round come this way, blew both his legs off. Wow. And I got the side blast. Wow. And I had to jump off. Joe grabbed me, threw me on the back deck, and they opened up, and a gunner in front of us, tank in front of us, he saw the gooks, and he smoked them with his 50 cal. And then we had 2 guys, a mortar team riding on the back deck of our tank. They bailed off with their 4-deuce mortar and already had it set up, and I scooted up the edge of the tank, and I scooted up to the sponson boxes, like toolboxing, and I looked down at them, and I hollered, my legs broke, and I think my arms broke. And they already dropped it, and I throwed my head back, and they fired that round right between my feet. Wow. They lobbed a mortar round. So I just jumped over them, and I landed, and I hobbled out on one leg, and I laid down, and Doc come up to me. And he'd only been in country like 2 months. If they didn't award that guy with a medal, nobody should get one. I mean, this kid was, I was a kid too, but, he's like 19 years old. Yeah. Red hair, freckle-faced little kid. And he was as cool as a cucumber. He come up and he started working on me, and someone hollered, "He's not the one, Doc," because Holt, neither one of us said anything when we got hit. He just flipped inside the tank. And they brought him out, and they brought him over by me, and by then they had somebody getting me on a stretcher, and they got him on a stretcher. And all he ever said, he never said, "Ow, boo," you don't hear none of that you see in the movies screaming. All he said was, "Shut the F up, Doc, I know they're gone." Doc tied his legs off, saved his life. Last I knew, he was still alive in Japan. But I think when you interview, you're going to find out that nobody really thought highly of the medevacs over there. When I'm laying there on the ground, one thing that's going through my mind is, like a month before that, I had to go in and recover a guy that they let fall out of a medevac, a sergeant. I had to go in and recover the body. So I'm thinking about that. They're putting me on one of those things, and the medevac wouldn't land because they said the LZ was still hot, landing zone was still hot, and it wasn't. No one firing. We were firing. We weren't taking any incoming. Well, General Burke was with us that day, area commander, and he was a 1-star brigadier general. And when he found out that Holt lost both legs and the medevacs wouldn't land, he brought his chopper in, his personal chopper in, and picked Holt up and medevaced him out. And I laid there for 45 minutes before the medevacs felt it was safe enough for them to land, to take me out.
Wow. What was, so what did they hit? I mean, what was the damage?
My left leg was totally shredded. I was opened up 14 inches by 4 inches on my left leg and up under my left arm, my left hand.
Wow.
The frag jacket saved both of us there.
Right. So then what happened after that? You were medevac to where, and then what?
I don't know where. Well, I went back to Quan Tri. Or was it? Yeah. Yeah, it was Quan Tri. That's where our rear area was. And I remember the top and some of the guys that were back in the rear. I remember them coming out to the medevac, and there was the XO, executive officer. He was standing off there. I was really cussing at him and calling him a chicken. How did they say that politically correct? Chicken frigger or something. Because he almost got me killed once. So, and then I remember the guys coming in when they were prepping me for surgery because I was really thirsty, and they brought me some water. They weren't supposed to. They gathered around my bed. They wouldn't let the doctors in until they gave me some water. I mean, the boys were protecting me. Right. I wanted to drink, and the doctors said no. They just pushed the doctors out of the way. And they surrounded my bed, and two of them went to a cooler there, and they brought me some water. And he's getting his drink of water.
Right.
And then the next thing I remember is waking up, and I don't know where I was. I kind of think I was in Cameron Bay. And that was like I don't know how long afterwards. And Brigadier General was pinning Purple Heart on me. Well, he said, I'll pin it on your pillow because I think you have enough holes in you. And I was under the influence of drugs.
Right.
I said, very effing funny, sir. And then I remember waking up again, and there was two officers standing at the foot of the bed, and there was a major. He was older than the young guy was a captain. The captain was standing at the foot of the bed, and the major was standing on the side looking at my leg. And the major was telling the captain to cut it off. He'll never walk with that. And the captain said, I think I can save it, sir. I think I can save it. And he was actually arguing with the major. And the major said, no, you cut that off. And I came to, and they're having this argument. So I kicked the major in the head with my good leg. So he said, F him, let it rot off.
And you still have it?
I still have it 45 years later. I've climbed mountains. I played softball, rode bulls. You name it, I've done it. You know? Right. Chased many an elk in that snow knee deep. And
it's done well by you.
I played softball at Ashland, and I was the leadoff batter because I was the fastest.
Right.
And that's the one he wanted to have cut off.
So what's the so how did you discharge from the Army? They flew you back?
Yeah, see, they give you a pick. They told you to pick 3 hospitals. Mm-hmm. So being as my brother was in Letterman's, I picked that, and I picked Seattle, and I picked Denver, which was Fitzsimmons Memorial at the time. And that's where I got sent because that's where they were sending most of the amputees. And the guy that was the head was Colonel Burkhalter. He was one of the leading orthopedic surgeons in the United States at the time. And that when I came back on a C-131 airvac on a stretcher. We were 3 high on stretchers in that. And I landed in Travis Air Force Base. It was the first time I saw the world, looking at the back bay.
Wow. What was that like? Did it feel good, or was it were you in too much pain?
Well, it was kind of bittersweet because it was raining, and I'm going, shit. Coming home, and it's raining, and all I can see is asphalt and cement on the runway.
Right.
And then from there, we flew to Denver, and the hospital wasn't too far from Denver. Here's one for you. You can tell your friends, political one. Well, the messed up the VA is. We were in Fitzsimmons, right? And we'd already graduated out of the main hospital. I spent 11 months there. We were in an outlining ward, and they sent in this young first lieutenant. He'd come in, and he had a sergeant with him. And he says, we're having trouble with our budget. He said, we need to cut $3 million off of our budget. So we've come up with some ways for you guys to help us, save money so we can keep this hospital open. So he started going through this litany of different things, And towards the end, he gets down and he goes, now, as far as toilet paper goes, he said, when you use the bathroom, he said, try to use 6 squares. And there's one in every crowd. Well, actually, there's 2 in every crowd. There's one idiot, and there's one guy that's always, got a crack one. The idiot raised his hand, and he goes, sir, he says, I only use 4. And the white guy in the back, he hollered out, well, use the other two to blow your nose. So, I mean, they could have saved Fitzsimmons for $3 million.
Right.
Now, how many billion are they in the hole down there trying to build another VA hospital in Denver?
Yep. It is.
If they'd have used only 4 squares.
Yeah, so it's the toilet paper that sunk them.
Yeah.
If only the real story had been told, right? So what's the when you got out? When did you get out of the Army, and what was life returning? How was it to return to life, civilian life, the real world?
I remember my first leave. Well, when I got here, I asked. I had a captain who was my doctor, and I asked him. I said, "When can I go home?" He said, "The day you can walk into my office." And I didn't have a walker on my cast. I couldn't use my left arm; it had shrunk up, and because the tendons, got damaged up in here, and I go, okay, and they made the mistake of leaving one crutch next to my bed. He left. 15 minutes later, about as white as his shirt, I'm standing in his doorway, sweat just pouring off of me. I drug my leg down there. I said, "Can I go home?" And he goes,
Wow.
No, Tallbull, he says, "They're going to bring a wheelchair and put you back in bed."
Wow.
He said, "When we put a walker on that," I said, "Don't worry, you'll get to go home." So, yeah, I remember crossing into Montana, and I rode home with some friends from down Denver. And as soon as we hit that Montana border, I said, "Stop." And I got out and I kissed the ground. I'd made it home.
Yeah.
But when I finally got out of the Army, I came home, and to the best of my knowledge, and I pretty much know what's went on down there, they had a powwow for me in Ashland at St. Labray. And there was an old, the way they did it way back. They had their giveaway, but not like what you see today. One person did, say they had a pot there full of food. They'd give it to, one person here. And that person would stand up and thank, all this stuff was given out in my name. They would thank me and say something nice, then they would thank everybody, then they would take it and they'd give it to someone different. Now that's one article would probably change hands 4 or 5 times before somebody finally kept it. Now that was an all-day affair. It lasted almost 10 hours. And I didn't realize at the time the honor they were bestowing on me. And I think it had to do a lot with, me being wounded and all of that, and my older brother. And I told you that there were 16 Tallbulls, first cousins, my dad's, his brothers. There was one girl in the family, so, the Tallbulls. There was 16 of us during Vietnam, 11 of us in combat. Just my dad and his brothers, his kids.
Wow.
So, and the tribe has never honored anyone in that high a fashion since me. And that was when I was down there in Lubbock, and I was telling Pancho about that. It only happened there. That wouldn't happen anywhere else. Not during Vietnam. Not in 1970. Well, it was 71 when I got out of the hospital. And unfortunately, my brother-in-law, the one that's married to my oldest sister, Adrian Foote, he came back and he said they threw feces on them, bags of urine, when they're getting off the plane. And you had to take it. You couldn't go after it. You had to walk through it for doing nothing.
Right.
Except what they were told to do.
Just serving. That's
just serving.
Did you? So you got a much different reception than a lot of your fellow vets.
Yeah. That's what was one of the things I was trying to allude to earlier about how the warrior creed and all of that within our tribe and the dog soldiers specifically. the ones I will talk about because that's who I am, is you receive that honor from them, and our highest honor is an eagle feather,
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, the veterans that were non-Indians didn't receive that. They were shunned. Like Pancho told me, he said, I got home. He said, I was hollered at, cussed at, had stuff thrown at me getting off the airplane. He said, so I went home, took my uniform off and threw it in the corner, he said, and crawled in a bottle. And, the guy became a millionaire and then drank it away.
Wow.
Because of the way he was treated down there in Texas. Just another Mexican that, and went to war and, an unpopular war. And so if you get right down to it, when you do get right down to it, Indian returning veterans are treated with the most highest honors that anybody can get. And the respect that they get for doing what they did. And that's the way it should be. But unfortunately, it isn't.
Yeah. When you look back on it, it's almost 50 years ago. How do you view the war today? And do you view it differently?
No. I've been asked that question numerous times. If you had to do it all over again, would you do it again? I say, yeah. I've had friends of mine that, one who was a Blackfeet, he asked me, real good friend. Matter of fact, I helped him get his 100% disability for PTSD. He was one of them LERPs. And he goes, would you do it again? And I said, yeah. He said, you're crazy. I said, no, I'm a Northern Cheyenne Dog Soldier Warrior. I would do it again.
Did you have
no mental reservation whatsoever?
Does that extend to even your son, who your children? Did you have any reservation about them doing the same thing? No.
Nope. I was just there for my son. As a matter of fact, I'm still bothered today by phone calls, Middle Eastern accent.
Yeah.
Because he used to call me from. Well, he did one. His first tour was Iraq, and the next two was Afghanistan. And I haven't gotten any in the last couple of years, but I used to get phone calls. And when he went to Iraq, I flew down to Fort Campbell. Did I fly? Yeah, I flew down because I remember leaving the airport in Great Falls, and I had my pipe bag with me and my pipe in there. And I go, you know what? Oh, yeah, we know what that is. We ain't even going to touch that. And I was thinking, I wonder what's going to happen when I come back out of Nashville. Sure enough.
Right.
They didn't touch it, but I had to take everything out, and then I had to be scanned for powder residue and everything. But I went down there to bless my son. I know I have the power.
Right.
And I went down there to bless him so no harm would come to him over there. Physical. And he just happened to have one Danny Cruz, a Mexican boy, and then the rest were white. And they came there and they wanted to be part of that. And I said, sure, I have no problems with that. My boy. I always got a story.
Yeah, I like your. That's why I do know how to pick them.
I was sitting there, and I was taking everything out of my pipe bag. Well, I have a braided piece of some hair about yay long that hangs off my pipe, and it's actually my middle son's braid. Before he went into service, I cut his braid off, and I kept it, so I put it to my pipe to help protect him. And I've just never taken it off. Well, I'm sitting there getting ready to do this, and these guys are over there whispering to Lloydie, and they're going, what is that hanging on his pipe? Is that hair? And he goes, yeah, that's hair. Is it a scalp? He said, well, you know those crazy Vietnam veterans. And that's all he said.
Right.
To this day,
They all think that you've scalped someone.
Yeah, they think it was a scalp. But anyway, I blessed them, and they all came back. And I went down there and did that 3 times. And it was on their second tour when they was in Afghanistan. Murph, he's still in. He's down in Fort Carson. And they were taking incoming. And Lloydie said he come running and come sliding on his belly into the bunker like that. And he said, Tallbull, burn some of that shit, meaning sweetgrass.
Right.
They believe. I mean, you can get in a fist fight if you tell any one of those guys that I had nothing to do with their coming back. It was just luck. When I came back, I never ate. When they came back, I was down there for every plane that landed, and they knew me down there at the base, and I never ate so much steak and lobster in my life. Each individual one of them took me out, and they thanked me personally for them making it back safe. And to this day, I mean, a number of them are no longer in the service. I still keep in communication with them through Facebook, and some of them still call me.
Huh.
They believe, and I believe.
Yep.
That I said that's it. It's the power, that you got that positive frame of mind.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, it's went on. My son, and I don't know. Did you have a chance to read that article?
Yeah.
And the only one not going in is Tommy, because they say he's 6'2", 330 pounds. So,
it's a big boy.
That's who was just calling me.
Do you? What do you want people to remember about Vietnam? Let's not talk about today. Let's talk about 50 years from now. You might still be around telling stories, but I probably am not going to be around 50 years from now. What do you hope people remember from Vietnam, from some guy who lived it?
Well, number one, I'd like people to remember that President Johnson didn't take us into Vietnam. President Johnson wanted to cure all the social and economic problems that we were having in stateside. But he took on a war that was given to him. And we followed in his footsteps. We went there, and I'd like people to know that the reason we went there is because our country felt threatened. And the only way to meet that threat or that force was by force, and meet it head on. And let's take it on in their backyard instead of waiting for it to come to our backyard. So, and the only way you're going to do that is you got to prove that you're the big boy on the block. And to stay being the big boy on the block, we're going to have to protect other people. Like I said, those people over there, the way they were getting treated was inhumane. And we were there, even though some of them may not have wanted us there, they were perfectly happy being like that. We were there to try to be their big brother, try to protect them from, the communism. And that's what it was. At some point, somebody has to say enough. And communism was trying to overrule. It goes plumb back into the Second War when Russia tried to come into Japan. And they wanted to be part of, come in there and take over. Well, they were after whatever Japan had, and MacArthur stood up to them. And in the same fashion, when the North was trying to take over South Vietnam, we did the same. We stood up to North Vietnam. And it would have been a totally different outcome if once the politicians got us into that and said, okay, we're not going to take it anymore, if they had let us fight that war.
Yeah, so you felt handicapped by that?
Yeah, we were called off the river once by a direct call from the White House. Came into Red Devil over there. That was the main base, the rear, the battalion headquarters. Get them troops out of the DMZ. We were in there fighting. We had it down, and I told the old man, I said, you give us 5 days, and I can lead you into Hanoi. 5 days. I can have you in Hanoi in 5 days. And good plan, but we won't be able to execute it. The war would have been over in a week. We'd have walked right in, marched into Hanoi, and it would have been over, but they wouldn't let us.
Yeah. Have you ever been back to Vietnam?
No.
Do you have any desire?
Not on bucket list, no.
Okay. What?
I wouldn't mind going back and looking at how those people made out, after.
Yeah. Because you wonder about that?
Yeah. I mean, I knew some families. I got to know some families because they let, like our barber came on base, and when we were in the rear and whatnot. And I mean, they're going to be there. And I got to know, a family, and they had a strange superstition. They wouldn't take a picture with an odd number. Had to be an even number of people in the picture.
Really?
Yeah.
So you got to learn a little bit about their customs too.
Yeah. And they knew that that I was different from most of the soldiers because I was an Indian. They didn't understand so much about our way of life, but they kind of knew that I was different. To them I was kind of special because.
Did being an Indian help you in any way understand them, or did it help? Did it hurt? Did it not make a difference? What?
Not so much with them, but I think as far as staying alive, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I knew my way around the woods. I mean, when we were kids, we thought nothing of walking from Lame Deer up on the divide between Ashland and Lame Deer to Crazy Edge, which was 10 miles to swim. I mean, kids in the city, they didn't know how to do that. We knew how to live off the land. I mean, we knew which turnips and, which plants and which flowers you could eat and the ones you had to stay away from. So as far as, like there's only 3 Northern Cheyennes were killed in Vietnam. And we, as far as survival, yeah, we had an upper hand than, leg up than everybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, most of us were hunting. You were out, by the time you're 9, 10 years old, you were out hunting, shooting rabbits and everything else.
So this is just kind of part of, you just did it in a jungle instead of out in Montana.
Like I said, he had me hunting a deer over there. I never did see that little scudder, but.
Well, when they're that small.
18 inches.
Yeah. You left Vietnam under different circumstances. Did it feel, I mean, it obviously felt good to be in Montana. Did it feel good just being home?
I'm going to have to say yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, in the fact that I'm home and I don't have to worry about getting shot at. Back then, you didn't have to. Now that's different.
Right.
But the other part was the adrenaline rush was gone.
Okay.
And the way it was explained to us is like you take and run two graph lines like this, and your highs and lows will be in there. Ours
are
off the charts. Our lows and then our highs. And I car had 2 speeds on and off. I built them to run as fast as I could. I built one had unlimited top end. Never did know the top end. Had a cop friend of mine wanted to see how fast it would go. I walked off his radar at 220 mile an hour on Highway 212, and I just came out of 3rd gear into 4th gear.
Did people, when you came back, had you changed to the people who knew you best?
Yeah.
In what way?
I was like, they were like still kids. To me, they were kids, and I wasn't. And I wasn't really overly aggressive. I just kind of stayed back in the shadows, and basically I laughed at a lot of people because of their limited learning capacities and whatnot, which I shouldn't have done at the time. And I kind of withdrew, and I started studying people. That's kind of a hobby of mine. I'll sit in a room, and I'll go in a bar and just sit there and watch people how they.
So what do you make of all these people? What does all that study paid?
A bunch of goofy ones out there. It's kind of, I mean, I'd put them into different groups, like the eggheads sitting over there, the ones that think they're the ladies' men or something like that, and then you get the women over there that there's one that she's scared and she's probably better than all the rest of them, but they don't, low self-esteem and stuff like that. And I just try to guess how they're going to react under different situations in there. I've never really been challenged mentally in any capacity. So I create these little things to keep my mind. I try to keep it as occupied as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like when I had that flashback, they doped me up major big time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that feeling. And I scoff at people when they say they have to take that stuff. I say, no, you can fix it up here. You know, you just got to learn what your trigger points are. And when I feel one coming on, I go lock myself I just go in a small room where I control the whole environment and I just talk it down.
Right.
I think it's kind of challenging. I love to get into a psychiatrist. I turn those guys inside out.
So why do you have to keep your mind all full all the time? Why do you keep it going all the time? Why is that?
Because it's only human nature that you're going to wonder about different things, and you're going to, and then they'll start to consume you. Like I was saying, when you had a buddy drop, you couldn't stand there and mourn them. You had to move on. You had to keep going. Otherwise, you're going to run over yourself. Right. So as long as you can keep your mind occupied, then you're not going to get in as much trouble as you can. And they'll say, well, you got too much time on your hands to think. No, you don't. It depends on how you think and what you think about. If you think about constructive stuff or pick up a book. I love to read. I've got books and books and books. By the time I was out of the 8th grade, I read the entire Encyclopedia Britannica. People don't even know what that is now.
That's right. If it's not on Google, it doesn't exist, right?
I read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Had 23 plus 2 unabridged revisions after that, 25 altogether. But if you keep invent little games for your mind to play with, like sit there, if I say and stretch that scissors long enough, maybe I can make it move. Rather than going out and looking for something to get into trouble, for no better word. Keep busy, and like when I worked for the tribe, I was their employment and training director. I had 485 people, plus staff of 15. That was fun because it was challenging for me to keep all them, try to keep them employed, keep my staff busy, and where nobody. Like I told him, I said, when you're on my dime, you're working. I didn't allow any gossiping. You're here to be productive because once you start gossiping, then you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah. And
I said, the old saying on the reservation, if you don't hear a rumor by 10 o'clock, start one, doesn't apply here. If you work, you give me, an honest 8, you're going to feel good about it. And they did. I still run into some of them people today, and they say that I was the best boss they ever had because I hired them to do a job, let them do their job, kept their minds occupied, rather than letting them slow down and get in trouble by starting it, So, yeah, and those were challenging times because I was challenged by the bureaucracy back in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Which is, it depends on how you go about it. One guy, he thought he was the smartest guy I ever ran into. And he made me mad. I quoted his regs back to him, and I'm the one that decides all this. I'm the one. But he had to sign off on me because I had it all right. And I stood up just to show him that he wasn't as good as he thought he was. And his secretary was sitting there, and I had a secretary with me because she had to do all the typing. And I said, when you find out who your real father is, tell him hi for me. And I shook his hand, and I walked out the door, and he was sitting there. His secretary was just trying not to laugh. And mine's going, what'd you tell him? What'd you tell him? I didn't hear what you told him. And I told her what I told him. She laughed. I don't think he ever knew what I called him. So, see, he was sitting there, and his mind wasn't where it should have been. Otherwise, he'd have known what I called him.
Right.
So, if the one thing I'd like to leave behind is you got an organism, a living organism, that's like none other known to mankind. Don't let it rot. Use it. Keep it active. Keep it thinking.
What role did in Vietnam and today that this is a big question, but what role did your spirituality play while you were in Vietnam?
I think it made me realize that, there's other things, other forces out there at work, rather than just what the Army was trying to indoctrinate into you. And I saw how other people, whole different race of people, were, how they reacted, what their beliefs were. And their beliefs were like totally foreign to us. But some of them were similar to ours. By ours, I mean the Indian people. Like they had to have all the body parts.
Mm-hmm.
So intentionally, of course, we scattered them. They buried them sitting up. And you get to thinking about it, and, we're all believe in a higher being. It's just that we have a different name for them.
Yeah.
And a different way about going about communicating with them. Or like, we believe that the Creator, let's see if I can get this right. Mine's racing. He took sweetgrass, tallow, buffalo tallow, paint, and I think the fourth one was dirt. He made a ball out of them. Made him into a ball, and that's how the earth was born. And he is in Bear Butte. He went into the mountain there. So, and these people over there, they believed in theirs and their beliefs on what they had, what was going to happen to them when they make the journey. And we kind of believe along the same lines. And you sit there, and I'd sit there and think about, here we are, some are making fun of these people. But in the end, when it's all over, we all want to go to that special place. And theirs isn't, the only difference between theirs and ours is what they call that place and how they're going to go about getting there.
Yep.
And, we, like I'm a Catholic too.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated from St. Lebré, so.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny because my brother-in-law, Adrian, is my godfather. They ran us through, and him and his brother was the godfather every kid that went through that one day. And at the same time, I practice our way.
Mm-hmm.
And, I believe in the Creator. Okay, which one do you believe in? The one that God, Muhammad, are like us, our Creator is in that mountain.
Mm-hmm.
You're all trying to get to the same place, you're just taking a different road.
Yep.
And you hope you get to that place. And that's what keeps you going, is that hope.
Yeah.
I'm going to get there. And when you lose that hope, you lose the person. That's the way I look at it. And I don't know if I would be drawing the same conclusions now because, that's one of those, what if we had eggs, we'd have ham and eggs for breakfast if we had ham.
Right.
So, did there some big thing that turned me over there? I don't know. I know one thing, when I was hit, there was this odor I could smell, and I couldn't identify with it for years. And it was probably 14, 15 years later, I had a dream. And I was riding off a mountain, down a mountain, and the cavalry was shooting at me. And these bullets, they were shooting 30-30s, and these bullets were passing through me. And as they were passing through me, they were setting my flesh on fire. And I woke up from that dream, and that was that smell. That metal was hot when it hit my leg, and it seared my flesh. And that's what I smelt, was my own flesh burning. And all them years, I couldn't identify with that smell until I had that dream. Now, you can analyze that dream all you want. Look at, Tommy.
That's okay.
Squaw Mountain. Well, I don't know if the mountain, the hill down there by in Lane Deer by the cemetery. If you ever get down there, you look up and there's these white rocks. And what it was a couple of warriors killed a cow, and the cavalry come in and they were going to hang them. So they went up on that butte there, and they weren't going to come down for the cavalry. So they sang their death song, and then they rode down that hill into the gunfire of the cavalry, and the cavalry killed them. Now, I knew the story, but I never related to it. And then I had that dream, and I figured out what that smell was. So maybe in an indirect way there, by virtue of that, running out and jumping on that tank, getting wounded, smelling that, brings me all the way back around to what happened to my people in the fashion that they were handled for stealing a couple cows.
Yeah.
So, and then me winding up working for the tribe and fighting to feed so people, could earn a living.
Yeah.
All those years later. So, you hear the things coming full circle and stuff like that. And it makes you, I still sit and wonder, why did I do that? Okay. And different scenarios play out in my mind. Why?
Yeah.
And there you go again, keeping that mind working, keeping it busy.
Right. Well, and having a lot of hope and faith. And again, the Irish have a proverb, we all go the same way home.
Yeah.
We all go the same way home. Okay, so I have made you talk a lot, but I wanted to know, is there any story or, it's an impossible task to me to say to any vet, give me all your experience in just a couple hours because there's more. But is there anything that I missed?
No. Each one of us, you can sit there and look at something as simple as a basketball, have 5 people look at it, and you're going to get 5 different versions of that basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And so my time over there, and I'm not reluctant to talk about it because I think people need to know and try to understand.
I agree.
Something that we went through as individuals, as a people, as a nation, and it's way past time to heal it. And I know, I'm in the VFW, I'm the 2-year trustee, and I'm on the House committee up there. And we had that where we met, and
the welcome home.
Yeah, and you're starting to see a lot more of it. Like I've been traveling down to Lubbock. Several times I ran onto Vietnam Veteran Memorial Highway. And it just, what you're doing, I think is very honorable in trying to present and preserve a story that isn't going to be, I should have left this out in the car.
Don't worry about it.
Oh, I bought a new car, and it's my insurance agent trying to call me.
Do you think you are? Can you ever be, or are you healed? Because you said it's time to heal. Is that a possibility? I don't know. I wasn't in Vietnam.
I think I can reach a state of mind where I didn't start wearing stuff that you've seen other guys, like they have Vietnam vet on a hat or a shirt.
Yep.
And I didn't start wearing things like that until, maybe the last year or two. I started to come more come to grips, not so much to grips, but at peace of mind over, everything. I killed people. To me, all my life I've justified it as a hunting trip, on a hunting trip. Whatever it takes to keep your sanity.
Yeah.
And after getting in contact with Pancho, it's okay to do what we did, is essentially what we're saying to each other. And I finally started wearing a T-shirt. Well, that one I had on, that black one, had Vietnam, Time to Honor Vietnam Vets on it.
Yeah.
Number one, I don't like to wear T-shirts.
You've got a golf shirt on today.
Yeah, actually, they bought this for me down there in Fort Campbell, my soldiers. That's why I wore it.
Yeah.
I almost wore the 101st, but I wasn't in it. I was a tanker.
Don't worry about that either. But, so did you? Well, I got to say, thank you for sharing your story, because that's what a project like this takes, is people willing to share their story. But most of all, I want to thank you for your service. Thank you for serving our country and for protecting us. I appreciate that.
Well, in turn, we need to thank you for coming up with this idea to preserve this. Without people like you who are willing to do something like this, we wouldn't have a story.
I got to tell you, it's every story I've heard, it's been my honor. I'll be very, very frank. It's been my honor to sit here and to hear you tell the stories, and thank you. Thank you for what you went through, and just like I said on Saturday, welcome back. If you didn't hear it, welcome back.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good to finally hear it.
Yeah. All right. This has been Vietnam Voices, and it's been my honor to be with Beaver Tallbull today.